Hey, son.
Howdy.
Getting everything set here. Nice weather here. Looking forward to your visit.
Very nice.
And we should be able to plan some fun stuff for when you are here. It's good weather. They had Indy here today. I got to see some of the qualifying yesterday and watch the race on TV today.
Nice. Detroit's always fun.
All right, son. Everything looks good. Are you ready?
I am ready to go.
Hello. Welcome to Hard Compound, an American take on Formula One. We've just finished watching Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona. Fun race. Interesting results. Patrick, son, can I get your quick analysis of the Spanish Grand Prix?
Yeah, absolutely. The other race, as Martin Brundle described it, was rather fun to see who would grab places 2 through 20, as it was pretty much already decided before the lights went out that Max Verstappen was going to win this race. But yeah, like you said, it was fun. There was a lot of action. Um, some cars and some drivers that uh, we kind of expected to do better that didn't do so well, and there were a few surprises there as well. Some cars looked pretty quick on certain tires on certain stints. The McLarens looked pretty good for a little while. The AlphaTauris looked pretty quick for a little bit. Even the Haas's looked kind of fast. But over a 66 lap race, we get a little bit of field spread, and but overall, I think some really fun racing, and it ended up being a good weekend.
Yeah, Max got his first Red Bull win at Barcelona. That was shockingly in 2016, 7 years ago. That was the site of the famous Nico Lewis crash where they took each other out. And I think it was the first lap when they were battling over the championship. That was when Mercedes had the dominant car. And now here is Max, his 40th win, unbelievably.
Wow.
I think, the best driver with the best team in the best car, this might be a runaway season for Max. That's not to say it's a runaway season for everyone else. Pierre Gasly did get penalized for actions in qualifying, but we had the starting six with six different teams, four different engines. It was Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, Honda, and Alpine Renault. Six different teams, and everyone brought upgrades. So I think right now what we're Mercedes, they have a car. That Mercedes didn't reveal all it could, just like Max didn't reveal all he could. But they got second and third. They're going to take over second place in the constructors. It's quite possible, and I think very probable, that Lewis takes over second in the driver standings very soon. But like I said, Max, best car, best driver, best team, easy win for him. But there's a lot of competition, as you and Martin Brundle have both said, in number 2 through 20. I also had said, Mercedes, I think by Imola would take over second spot. I think Imola was canceled. They didn't quite make it happen in Monaco. I believe they're now second in the constructors, and I don't think they'll look back. I think they are going to be better than Aston. They've got a better car. As George Russell has said, no one is better at developing the car during the season than Mercedes. So I think, it's now going to be a Max Lewis battle in my view, but I don't think it's going to be close like 2021. Let me get your top five and give me your rationale for that, for the Spanish Grand Prix.
All right, I think my top five's a little weird for this one, but I kind of like making a point to give credit to some of the drivers a little bit further down the order that don't have a car, really to compete with the top dogs. That said, I think the best overall driver this weekend was Max Verstappen. I know he has an incredible car underneath him, but unlike his teammate Sergio Perez, he rocks it every single week in on Saturday and on Sunday. And he did it again this weekend, crushed it in qualifying, no problems there, ran away with the race. Just really incredible feeling with the car. Just he just seems so at ease, and like everything is just coming so naturally to him.
Yeah,
It's
he had
impressive to watch.
yeah he had the Grand Slam. He had he won qualifying. Obviously, well, he had pole. He had the fastest lap, and he led every lap. And in the what he's done since Abu Dhabi 21, winning the world championship in 21, it's just been remarkable. So and the thing is, we all everyone loves the great ones and loves consistently great ones. The Michael Jordans, the Tom Brady's, Lewis Hamilton's, and now Max Verstappen, I believe, belongs in that conversation. But we want the great ones challenged. We know Tom Brady will probably win that Super Bowl. We know Michael Jordan will probably win that next basketball championship. But we want them challenged. During the turbo hybrid era, really, once Nico Rosberg left, Lewis wasn't really challenged. There were a race or two, but it was rare that he was challenged. And we're sort of now in that period of Max Verstappen dominance. So we sort of all admire the very greatest at their chosen profession, but we do want to see them challenged. And right now, no one is challenging Max Verstappen. And sadly, that includes his teammate, Sergio Perez, who is underperforming. So yeah. All right. Didn't mean to interrupt you there, but let's go with your number two after
Yeah, I
Max.
mean, I think that's what made that 2021 season so special was the battle, just the gritty. Um, I don't know, just that battle between Hamilton and Verstappen was so fun, so exciting to watch. Every single race, you were on on the edge of your seat, waiting to see what happened in that first turn, or even if it came all the way down to the end of the race. It was always fun. Um, so a little bit of foreshadowing, I guess. But Lewis Hamilton is my number two driver of the weekend. That Mercedes,
Nice.
the upgrades are looking like they're working well. Um, both him and Russell seemed pretty happy with the car, at least during the race. And, Hamilton, like it was Alonso for the first, 5 or 6 races, Hamilton looked like the only driver that could even come close to keeping pace with Max, which I think is good to see. If they start qualifying well, getting on that front row with him, we might see some spicy scraps going into the first turn. So,
Yeah, you mentioned Alonso. There are currently three world champions on the grid: Verstappen, Hamilton, and Alonso. And so far this year, they've all looked to be the three best drivers on the current grid.
yeah. So then I guess here's where my top five gets a little bit weird. I have Yuki uh, in the
Wow.
AlphaTauri. That car's bad. It's I think they only have a total of 2 points this season. Um, and Yuki looked good. He was fast. He was quick. He was making moves. He was defending. He got points for the team, and I think was unfairly penalized, and dropped out of the points due to that penalty. I think overall he had a really good weekend, a good showing, which is nice to see from him. Uh, he's had a tough go of it his first couple of seasons, but this year I think he's been looking pretty good, feisty, fast. in a not good car.
Yeah, I think everyone almost universally has agreed the stewards got that wrong. It was the Yuki and Zhou battle, and he did not run Zhou off the track, and everyone seems to think that he should not have been penalized. And I think that's not just because everyone seems to like Yuki. I think they thought just on racing principle that he should not have been penalized.
Yeah, I agree with that. Speaking of Yuki and Zhou, I have Zhou as my fourth.
Wow.
I think very similar to Yuki. He doesn't have a great car under him, but I think he battled hard. He looked fast. He made some good moves on track. That actually was a fun battle with Yuki there. But Joe ended up, ahead of Gasly. He split the Alpines after the Tsunoda penalty. Got points for Alfa Romeo, and was well ahead of his teammate Bottas in that Alfa Romeo. So I think overall he did really well.
Nice, nice.
And then fifth, I have a Spaniard, Carlos Sainz. The Ferrari looked poor for Ferrari, I guess, this week. He had a really good qualifying, whereas his teammate obviously did not. Leclerc, said there was something wrong with his car. We're still kind of unsure what the issue is there. But Sainz looked good. He held his own against cars that basically were much faster than him. He ended up in a top 5 position, got, some much needed points for Ferrari through this sort of the opening struggles of this season that they've had. So I think overall, well done to him in his home race.
Yeah, I was happy for Sainz, unhappy a bit for Alonso. They're both the two Spaniards, but man, it's just been such a woeful year for Ferrari. They have just regressed. I mean, it's just it's borderline inexplicable how poor Charles has done this year and how poor Ferrari overall has done. So, but let's see your top 5: Max, Lewis, Yuki, Zhou, and Sainz. Nice. Now, you did not have Alonso on there, nor did you have his teammate Lance Stroll. They came in 6th and 7th, which for them, shockingly, has been a disappointment. Was a disappointment. I mean, I think we should give credit to Aston Martin for how well they've done this year. I do not believe they can hang the rest of the year against Mercedes, but I do think now they can with Ferrari. They have a chance of being third in the constructors. And I think when you look at where that team was just a couple of years ago, I think that's remarkable. For them to finish in 6th and 7th, and us generally think of that as a disappointment, I think just shows how well they've done versus Ferrari.
Yep, that is totally fair.
And you had Max as your top. You did not have Sergio. I think I think we've been hard on Sergio Perez this year. You even though made a crazy prediction that you thought he could be replaced this year. But he has to bring it. He's now, we've always said he has the Bottas role. Look, Max is the better driver and he's got the best car. You take that best car and bring it into second. And that was what Valtteri Bottas's job was all those years. He came in 4th and he did not really, 4th looked easy for him, but 2nd and 3rd did not. And that's not good.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, it was entirely his fault where he started on the grid.
Right.
So, yeah, to make it back up into 4th from your starting position, okay, well done. But you shouldn't be finishing 4th, right? When Max is cruising, lifting and coasting, and he ends up 25 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton. You should be in 2nd place.
Yeah. Max is doing, all those years, Alonso, he's just so good. that if he didn't have a challenge, like if he didn't have a car that compete for podiums or wins, he would sort of make up little fake challenges, I think. And I think, I sort of think Max Verstappen was doing that today when he kept repeatedly, going off the track and, violating track limits. And, Christian Horner got on the radio several times, like, can you please stop doing that? You're going to get penalized and there's no need for it. I think he just sort of was like looking for a challenge. And I think, yeah, like you said, Max, it was such an easy victory, and for Sergio to not even make the podium, that was not good. What do you think was your best surprise of this race?
Um, that's a good. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I think one of the most surprising things, and which was kind of fun, were like the qualifying results. So that starting grid. I mean, you mentioned it right at the top. The top six were uh, all different teams, um, with all different sort of power units. Um, that's cool to see that there's a lot of people competing, a lot of drivers, a lot of teams that are competing together. Mercedes kind of showed their dominance again. Well, Verstappen and then Mercedes. Um, but it's fun to see sort of the last two weekends. The qualifying has been really exciting. It's created some really interesting grids. And unfortunately, this week it didn't translate necessarily into a that sort of chaotic race. I think with Lando going out right away, and kind of some teams struggling a little bit more with tire wear. But it's fun to see, at least on Saturday, everyone looks like they can compete with each other.
Yeah, yeah, that is a good surprise. The George Lewis little collision there in qualifying, I think George likes to make slightly dickish moves at times, but it was reminiscent of the Lewis Nico crash in Barcelona in the race, but at a much lower level. Um, a good surprise for me, I thought, was Alonso making it clear that he was not going to attack Stroll, yeah, his teammate at Aston, and he, Alonso knows what's happening here. There's no point. He could have passed Stroll, but in his view, that was the best he was going to do. So the team, instead of having sixth and seventh Stroll Alonso, would be sixth and seventh Alonso Stroll. But there was a time, I think, when Lonzo was going to be like, "No, that's not acceptable. If I can come in sixth instead of seventh, I'm coming in sixth." So, I think him sort of embracing a team, while still being great, is fun to see. What about disappointment? You have any big disappointments in this race?
I mean, I think there were a few disappointing things that happened in this race. Um, Naturally, like that Yuki penalty was a bit disappointing, to see them kind of uh, hand that out and force him out of the points, for something that really I don't think was an issue. Right? It seemed
Right.
like good racing,
Yeah,
and
that's racing. Yeah.
and to that point, how the fuck does George Russell keep getting away with no penalties at all for like hitting people? He
Yeah.
got Gasly got a sixth place grid penalty for holding people up in qualifying. George Russell literally hit somebody, got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
So I think that the way these are being handed out is, uh, I think it's pretty obvious who is getting the better deal.
Yeah. I don't think there's what in the NBA when Jordan was sort of dominating, had what the Jordan rules they called him, and in the NBA has a reputation of refs not calling the stars. They get breaks. Um, I think this is more like baseball. We need to look at this more like baseball. Um, umpires have a strike zone, for example. They call balls and strikes. Um, and different umpires have slightly different sort of strike zones, even though it shouldn't be. They do. However, the batters need to know that umpire strike zone. And, these are different places: Barcelona 1 week, Monaco, and 2 weeks in Montreal, different people on track. But within a race, within a weekend, within a setting, it needs to have consistency. And like you said, Gasly gets sixth place grid penalty for slowing folks down. Russell gets nothing for sort of sliding into his teammate, for example. Yeah, I'm with you on some of these calls.
Yeah, I think the consistency is really the issue. I'm not sure why it's so inconsistent, and but yeah. So I guess that's one disappointing thing, and then I guess the last one was after such a good qualifying for Norris and Piastri, in that McLaren, um, you know, into turn one, or maybe it ended up being turn two. Norris, smacks into Hamilton, breaks his front wing, and then ends up sort of petering around for the rest of the race, back at the back of the pack. So we thought we were going to get some really good racing out of the McLaren, and then we ended up not right away.
Yeah, yeah. I've said for years, no one is better at getting the elbows out within a prescribed manner than Lewis Hamilton. And so it did not surprise me that he and Lando had a tussle at the start, and that he got no penalty for that, and that it was Lando who took the brunt of it. But I was hoping to see something more from Lando, and sort of for him to be taken out of the race effectively on the start, first lap. That was probably the biggest disappointment. I think my second disappointment was Logan Sargent. Again, I know Williams is bad. It's not like we hear from Albon week in and week out, his teammate, his experienced teammate. But he's the lone American driver. We've heard such good things about him, and what is this, 7 races in, and it's really just sort of been, it just sort of, you could replace him with anyone, it seems like, in that you just absolutely do not want to ever happen in Formula One. So that, I think, so for me, Logan and Lando would be my biggest disappointments.
Yep.
What about on the virtual podium? You have anything, anyone, any group that belongs on the virtual podium, Patrick?
Well, I guess it's not necessarily pertaining to Formula One, but like you mentioned, we had the Detroit IndyCar Grand Prix this weekend. Um, in in downtown, around the streets of downtown Detroit, which is very cool. We used to have it on Belle Isle, and that was always fun. But racing around by the Renaissance Center, and down by the convention center, that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah,
Um,
along the river, right across from Canada.
Yep. So that was fun. And then another race around the world. We had Formula E in Jakarta this weekend, all the way out in Indonesia. And I think it's cool that there are these sort of racing series that go all over the place. And I think about Lewis Hamilton's always saying, like, oh, we should go back to have a race in South Africa. I think it would be so cool to maybe get away from these little pockets. There's like 8 or 9 races in Europe, and like 5 or 6 races in the Middle East. It would be cool to see more places around the world hosting races more consistently.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Return to South Africa. I mean, given the turmoil there, I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. But Vietnam, like you said, at Formula E and Jakarta, what that would just be amazing. I mean, one of the great things about Formula One is it's a global sport, and it's not simply that it's watched around the world; they go around the
Yeah.
world. So I mean, they're Barcelona this week. In 2 weeks, they're in Montreal. So I love that. So that's a great idea. Um, I guess for me, the virtual podium was great to see Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, the two Spaniards, arm in arm.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good one. I would also I know I promote F1 TV and I should sort of demand a sponsorship fee from them, but I like F1 TV because the stream works better than the ESPN/Sky stream for me at least. You can get their feed, the Brundle David Croft feed. They have the data. It's always fun. However, a note of caution. So I put F1 TV on the virtual podium, but not in first because they are always many seconds behind the ESPN/Sky stream. So if, for example, you were in social media, all of those people are commenting on a race that you are waiting 4 more seconds before it happens. So all right, switching to the soft compound. I heard a cool idea, Patrick. Uh, there is this place called Top Golf, and you sort of go there, and people like you talk about golf, and you sit around and you drink and you talk some more about golf, and then you talk about golfers and golfing, and you sort of go into a sort of semi artificial world and sort of can pretend to golf, at least tee off. And they are trying to create this with F1 Arcade, where you go in and you drink and talk about F1, and then you watch F1 and you meet other people and listen to them talk about F1. But supposedly they'll have really good sims in there where you can pretend you're an F1 driver. And they are moving out of London and they're going to put one up in Boston. And hopefully we'll start seeing those in the cities around the country.
Yep, that would be very cool. Um, there's a Top Golf place not far from where I live. I have been once. I don't care about golf at all, so I didn't talk about golf with anybody. But it's kind of fun to smack a ball off of a tee, and get points for it, and then drink while you do it. So I imagine that the same principle applies to Formula One, something that I care about and like. Um, to just sit around, hang out, have a drink, chat about F1, and then pretend to drive very, very fast. That sounds fun to me. Um,
that does. I think that would be great.
I mean,
Yeah,
I already
yeah.
have
I
the Formula One game, F1 2022 or whatever. Um, and that already is fun. But then to have a sim set up for it, to actually feel like you're in a Formula One car, I think would make it even more fun. So
Oh yeah. I mean, the only thing I think that is a downside here is I did not think of this idea, and I should have. It's like, oh, a place where we've got Sims and F1 on the screens and everyone's drinking. Um, yeah, that's an obvious one. So we all should have thought of that. So shame of us. Um, now, but a tougher matter. Who should get fired? You brought up earlier Yuki was screwed out of points by an unfair decision due to a racing incident with Zhou Guanyu. It was Alpha versus Alpha. I looked. Red Bull Honda, however they call the full name of their team, has 287 points. Now, admittedly, Max Verstappen is the best driver on the grid right now. 287 points. AlphaTauri Red Bull Honda has 2. That is almost impossible. That seems almost impossible to me. That's like flipping a coin 10 times and 9 times it comes up heads and one time it lands in the middle, you know. Um, uh, this is inexplicable to me. Do you have any thoughts on this? Is how is this happening, Patrick? And who is there someone that should get fired? Maybe it's Nick, the semi rookie driver Nick DeVries.
Yeah, I mean, he's been poor, Nick DeVries. Um, I think that there's got to be a lot of people in the AlphaTauri / Red Bull management that are failing this team uh, because it wasn't that long ago that this was Red Bull's farm team. They brought in drivers from their academy. Max Verstappen started here. Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon,
Yep.
Carlos Sainz, all started with this team, or the Toro Rosso team, as
Right.
it was.
Same. Essentially
Um,
the same. Yeah.
and they were a middle of the pack team. They were sixth or seventh, fifth, sixth, seventh team on the grid, and now they're woeful, like just struggling to get any points at all. And it's not like Red Bull seems to care to bring in any of their academy drivers to this team. Um, so there's something there. I don't know if Helmut Marko has any. I'm pretty sure he used to have responsibilities with this team. I'm not sure if he does anymore. If there's other people in the sort of Red Bull Racing management group um, that are failing this team because they're maybe spending all of their resources and time and effort on the main Red Bull team. But yeah, as you put it, they're by far the best team, and then scrounging around with the likes of the Williams.
Yeah,
Um,
I mentioned I'm not sure if it was last year or earlier this year. I had predicted that Red Bull would sell them off. Now, for example, here in the U.S. in Major League Baseball, you a team that starts sort of gutting its minor leagues, it's sort of pulling cash out of them. And then for its team, it starts cutting veteran players with the big contracts. That's sort of a sign that not just that things are going wrong, but almost certainly they're looking to sell the team off. And there's AlphaTauri is giving off a similar vibe here that it doesn't even have the prestige anymore of being sort of Red Bull's sister team of the team of the hot young new drivers. So I do think they are going to sell off this team. And if not, lots of people need to be fired because 2 points, that's just sad. All right. Now, ask the stewards. Let's do the Ask the Steward segment. I saw this online. Folks were suggesting that the point system is not that it's unfair, but it's incomplete. So, for example, Max got 26 points today, 25 for winning, and then 1 point for the fastest lap. But only the top 10 drivers get any points at all. All 20 cars, all 20 drivers finished. Shouldn't there be a system where everyone gets points? So let's say and it doesn't have to be 20, 19, 18, all the way down to one, because you want folks to compete for the number one spot and then race for number two and race to be in the top 10, for example. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts of that, Patrick? Or is that something to shelve for future episodes? Points for every finish.
I mean, that just sounds like a a children's school award. Oh, congratulations, you're a finisher. Who
Uh,
fucking cares? Um,
ah,
win.
nice.
I think awarding points to everybody is like, that rewards you for doing poorly. You can fuck up 100 times and then you finish 20th, 10 laps down, and you get a point though. That's insane.
Okay.
No,
All right.
no.
All right. We don't have to table that for a future episode then. Speaking of points, I guess we should say, speaking of dollars, I saw Red Bull signed another big sponsorship deal with a company called SUI, SUI. Now, because I am in the land of the free and the home of the brave, that is the United States of America, I don't always know every company that's a sponsor of an F1 vehicle or F1 team.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, it's some oil company or a cigarette company or a watch company. How watches became as important as oil and cigarettes, I will not know. But
It's
that's
a
just a thing
status symbol.
right. This is a thing I will never know. But it's funny because I looked into this, and so the crypto news site CoinDesk says blockchain, which Sui is a blockchain that went live less than a month ago, and it has already amassed enough money to sign a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal with Red Bull. And what does Sui do? Well, they're a blockchain company. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. What will they do for Red Bull, and what does this partnership mean for them? Well, they're going to create a series of digital experiences. So this sort of sounds like a combination of trying to gin up money for NFTs, blockchain, cryptocurrency. So it seems doomed not just to failure, but doomed to almost immediate failure. But it did make me think, man, there is no better platform than Formula One. I mean, people are just coming up to these companies and just waving wads of cash, private equity cash, public money, tech money, brand money. I mean, what a great business to be in. I mean, imagine owning an F1 team, Patrick.
I wish that I could even dream about owning an F1 team. um, uh, yeah, I mean that's just crazy. Um, I
I mean, we all know what's going to happen with this company, Sui. I don't need to say it, but we all know. We all know. All of us know.
yeah,
Everybody knows.
I'm sure the contract with Red Bull is also very scrupulous. So they are making sure whatever happens to Sui, uh, nothing's happening to that Red Bull team. Um, all they did was make money from this, and that's it. Um, which is pretty cool. I think a few years ago, Haas, had an energy drink sponsor that kind of blew up in their face a little bit when they filed for bankruptcy or whatever, and then Haas had no money, and so there was a whole ordeal about that. I don't think the same is going to happen here with Red Bull. So
Yeah, I think it's. I'm with you there. I think it'd be interesting to see the faith Red Bull has in them by how much money, actual U.S. dollars, were put into escrow. If it's nothing, then maybe Red Bull's like, hey, we really believe in this company. If it's 100%, I think that tells you everything. Across the line, that is our segment where we predict next race's top five. Once a driver is chosen, he is off the table. If we choose the correct driver, we get a point. If that driver comes in the exact spot, we get 3 points. Patrick, what are the current standings?
well, after this weekend, you narrowly extended your lead. So you're at 30 points to my 22.
Okay. I will take that. The next race is in 2 weeks in Montreal. Great city for 3 months out of the year. 6 months out of the year, it's basically Siberia. 3 months out of the year, it's sort of like like Ontario marshland with the bugs and the heat and the humidity. 3 months out of the year, it is beautiful. And I say that knowing that it's filled with Canadians, Patrick.
French Canadians at that.
French Canadians. So I think you choose first, right? So who do you have
first.
winning for the Montreal Grand Prix?
Lance Stroll. Just kidding. I'm not taking Lance Stroll.
The Canadian Lance Stroll. Which reminds me, it was only 2 years ago we had 2 Canadians.
What was last year?
Lance. Oh yeah. Wait. Nikita. Wait, Mazepin was in there last year. Oh my goodness, time.
Latifi was.
Mazepin
was 2 years ago.
Mazepin is the Russia.
I can't even imagine.
Latifi.
I can't even believe that was a thing. We had Nikita Mazepin and Latifi in F1 at the same time. That's crazy.
That is a clash of the titans. All right. So who do you have is winning Montreal?
I am going to take Lewis Hamilton.
Ooh. Now, I said after Abu Dhabi 2021, Hamilton was so shook and Verstappen was so good that Lewis Hamilton not only would not get his 8th World Driver Championship, but he would never again win a F1 Grand Prix. This could prove me wrong. Well, we'll see. We'll see. You've got Lewis Hamilton winning. Max is the man on a mission. Best driver, best car, best team. I have Max Verstappen. In second place, best car, best team, not the best driver, but they're going to light a fire under him. So Sergio Perez takes second, a Red Bull 1-2.
Ooh, interesting. I think that I will take. They looked so good this weekend. A Mercedes 1-2. Hamilton, Russell.
Wow. That would be interesting.
And then, in a Mercedes-powered vehicle, I will take the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso. He will not be happy with this 7th place finish and will once again podium.
All right. Well, then we've got Red Bull. We've got Mercedes. You've got Alonso from Aston. Ferrari has been hapless. I will say that will continue. And so I will go with Lance Stroll. The Canadian gets onto the podium in Montreal, Canada.
Dang.
I will not go with a Ferrari driver in 4th, but rather with a Alpine, Esteban Ocon, in 4th.
Nice. Let's see, 4th and 5th. I guess I think they looked so promising yesterday. Today was difficult, but I think they'll maybe figure out their struggles a little bit. McLaren, I'm going to take Lando Norris, P4.
Okay, nice.
And then, we can't pick 10 drivers and not take a Ferrari, so I'm going to take Carlos Sainz.
All right, so you have Hamilton, Russell, Mercedes 1-2, Alonso, Lando, and Sainz. I've got Max, Sergio, a Red Bull 1-2, Lance Stroll, the Canadian, on the podium. Esteban Ocon. I am not going to put a Ferrari in there. And instead, I can't put Lando because you've chosen him and taken him off. So I will have an Alpine 4-5 with Ocon, then Gasly.
Nice.
Any crazy predictions for Montreal or the rest of the season, Patrick?
Well, we heard a little or got a little insight, I guess, after the race. Hamilton's planning on having a chat with Toto this week, likely about his contract situation. I think Hamilton will sign a 1-year contract with Mercedes for less money than George Russell is making, which is like
Wow.
$8 million a year, I think.
I do not think that. I do not believe that he will turn that down. We'll see though. We'll see. I do not have a crazy prediction for Montreal. I do for it's not even really for the season, but end of the season, Max's dominance will just be so apparent, and it will look like it will continue into 2024 because, as I said, best driver, best car, best team. Even Mercedes, with all the developments, I don't think will catch them. Ferrari, for all their haplessness, I do not think will catch them. So I think there will be major rules changes in F1 that take place in 2024. I'm not sure what they are, but I do think, even though it will be to go after Max Verstappen, they are the right thing to do. Um, the NFL is not just the most popular sport in the US, but also probably in the world, at least revenue wise. And it's because they do everything to promote competitive parity. So small teams like Green Bay and Cleveland and Cincinnati can compete with Los Angeles and New York any week, any year. We do not have that in F1, and we never have. But I do think that they're going to do something radical with these rules, that a spending cap and regulations that focus on aerodynamics are not enough. So maybe we reverse sprints. We'll get a weird way of handing out points. I'm not sure exactly, but I think that's coming our way.
Well, that's very interesting. I saw Will Power this week, one of the best IndyCar drivers of all time, uh, was talking smack about Formula One, saying that IndyCar is actually the toughest racing competition in the world, and that F1 competitiveness is a joke. So, I think other drivers around the world are seeing a similar thing, that, you know, F1 just isn't as competitive as maybe it should be. And so I think, it wouldn't be all that surprising if there were regulations developed in order to promote competitiveness within the sport.
Yeah, I think the spending cap was mostly done because it was just getting out of hand. Mercedes could spend $1 billion and Haas would spend 100 million, and it was becoming that the sport itself could not survive that. I also think there's going to be a lot of Max Verstappen fans will peeved at this because they think it's an attack on him, and especially after we saw Lewis Hamilton winning year after year after year in a just hyper dominant car. But this is a new era. We've more U.S. fans, more fans around the world, and they're going to demand competitive parity. So I do think that will happen. All right. I want to remind our listeners, send your questions or comments to hardcompoundpod@gmail.com. We may read them on the show. We definitely will read them. And I wish to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. And we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
Awesome. Good show, son. I was happy with the weather we had in Detroit for the Indy. Detroit put on a good show as best it could, and I think it made for a fun race.
Nice. Yep. It was always a fun weekend in Detroit, I think.